explain chapter 2. Chapter 2 is about classification of businesses. In this chapter, we'll study the different sectors in any economy, and we'll talk about the change in importance of business classifications, and also we'll differentiate between private sectors and public sectors in an economy. Okay, so let's start. The first thing I should do before we talk about the sectors is the meaning of economy. So I have to know that each country has its own economy, of course, and the economy in general represents the wealth and resources of any country. So all the things that the country produce from goods and services, we call them an economy. In any economy, businesses are classified into three sectors: the primary sector, the secondary sector, and the tertiary sector. So to differentiate between these three sectors, we can see this diagram here. So when I say primary sector, I mean the sector of extraction of natural resources. It's the sector that produce raw materials to be used by other sectors. When I say secondary sector, I mean the production of goods. It's the manufacturing sector. So this sector will use raw materials produced by the primary sector and manufacture them. And the last sector is called tertiary sector, or the service sector. This sector includes retailing, like selling the goods manufactured in the secondary sector, and services, banks, transport, tourism, education, and all these. So as you notice, we have three sectors in the economy. So the primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. Now, let's apply and understand the three sectors of the economy by solving this exercise. So here they're asking you to classify these businesses and say if the business is in the primary sector of industry, or secondary sector, or tertiary sector. So when I say insurance businesses, as you know, they are service businesses. So they are not in the primary because they don't involve extraction of natural resources. They are not in the secondary because it's not about manufacturing of goods. They are in the tertiary sector, the service sector. Forestry, as you know, it's cutting wood, so it's extraction of natural resources. It's in the primary sector. Coal mining as well, it's in the primary sector. Computer assembly is in secondary sector because it's manufacturing of computers. Travel agent is tertiary sector because it's a service sector. Bakery, it's a secondary sector, making bread. And the last one, which is car showroom, it's in the tertiary sector. So as you notice, businesses will be in different sectors, and of course each economy has the three sectors, but the importance of sector will be more than other sector in different countries. So we have to differentiate between two types of countries. So it's important to talk about the types of countries. If you see the map here, we can see the developed countries and developing countries. Why it's important to differentiate between the two words? Because the importance of any sector will be different in depending on the country. So when I say a developing country, I'm talking about countries where the manufacturing sector is growing. It's recently established, so you notice that most people live in poor areas. They have low income. They have a little demand for services like hotels and insurance, right? So you see that the primary sector and secondary sector, they will be stronger than the tertiary sector. So let's say Brazil, for example. However, when I say developed country, I'm talking about a country which has a very successful manufacturing sector, and their tertiary sector is growing. And of course, most of the people live in big cities and they have very good standards of living and high income. So the two countries, or the different types of countries, uh, is important here, because if I want to see if there's any country, for example, Saudi Arabia, if I want to see the importance of a sector in any country, I have to see the output produced by the sector and the number of employees employed or working in the sector. So if I look at these 2 points, I should know which sector has more importance in the country. Okay, so if you notice here, I have this table just to give you a clear idea about the different sectors and how they vary between different economies. So let's take United Kingdom, for example. You notice that the tertiary sector is 74%. However, it's a 3% only for primary. Malaysia, for example, they have more primary than United Kingdom, and their tertiary sector is 47%. Zimbabwe, the last one, they rely on primary sector because it's 40%. So the output and number of employees in Zimbabwe will be more in the primary sector than other sectors. So it's important to classify countries, and it's important to know that classifying countries will depend on different sectors and not only on one sector. So you notice that the importance of a sector might increase in some countries, and other sectors will decrease. I mean, of course, the importance. So we have a lot of reasons for this change. So why some countries they have a growing importance of tertiary sector, for example, and decline in the importance of primary sector. So we have a lot of reasons. Main reasons we can talk about: the consumers nowadays, they have more income, and of course when people have more income, they demand more products, and of course they demand more leisure activities. And it's important to know that people now are educated. So when we have these reasons, countries will start moving from relying on primary, for example, activities, to rely on secondary activities, so to meet the demand of customers and people. And of course, a lot of countries are moving to tertiary sector also to meet the demand of these people. Why? Because you have to satisfy them. You have to give them services, banking, hotels, insurance, leisure activities. So all these will make the country move from a sector to another. So the importance of the sectors, or let's say the classification, will be different, and we have a lot of reasons why a sector in a certain country will have an importance more than other sector. Uh, it's also important to differentiate between two uh, sectors in an economy or in a country. If you hear the word a private sector business, we are talking about businesses owned by private individuals. These people who want to make profit, want to make money. However, when I talk about public sector, I'm talking about organizations owned and controlled by the government. So, of course, if they are owned and controlled by the government, then the government will provide services to people, and the profit will not be the main objective. So, if you notice in the private sector, the main target is to make profit. So, when you produce goods and services, these goods and services should be suitable for these people, because at the uh, of course you want their profit, so, and you want their money, so you want to make profit. That's why you have to produce goods and services that consumers really want. However, in public sector, it's different. The decisions are taken by the government. Services are usually provided, and they are affordable, and they are accessible by everyone. Sometimes they are free of charge. So we can take two examples. Let's say private sector, for example, a restaurant owned by a private individual. So this individual has a target, which is profit. So they will provide the best services, and they produce the best goods to satisfy consumers. However, in the public sector, let's say public hospital, the target is not to make profit. The target is to satisfy people and give them the service. Uh, Now, I want to explain something in your book, which is called mixed economy. In the syllabus, it's not required. After the year 2015, uh, it was eliminated. But I have to know the meaning of mixed economy. When I say first types of economy, I'm talking about three types. Uh, One is called the free market economy, and one is called command economy, and one is called mixed economy. So when I say free market economy, it's the economy where all the resources are owned by private sector, and these businesses, of course, they want to make profit, and it depends on demand and supply. I mean, what people demand will be supplied. So this is the free market economy, totally controlled by private individuals. Okay, so in this map you can see a lot of countries and states in USA. So you see that a lot of states, they are different. Uh, a lot of them, they are free market economies, and you'll see other examples where we have a command economy. So when I say command economy, I mean the economies owned, or resources owned by the government, and the government will control everything. They will state what to produce, how to produce, how much, and all these things. Of course, the government will control all these, and the consumers have little choice, because the services are there and consumers have to use the services. They have no choice. Of course, this is totally different in the private sector. And the last one, this is a command economy. Of course, you know, some of the countries nowadays, they have a command economy. For mixed economy, of course, it will be both free market economy and the command economy. So nowadays, 95%, let's say, or 98%, let's say, of countries, they have a mixed economy, an economy which is owned by the private sector and by the public sector. So you'll see in any country two economies. I mean, two sectors, private sector and public sector, they own businesses in this economy. Um, if we're going to take examples, we can see a lot of examples of businesses that the government might own, mainly defense, for example, public hospitals, public schools, electricity, water supply. Notice that the government will control all these businesses, and these businesses are really important for everyone. That's why the government will control these. However, the private sector will have also businesses, and they operate to make profit. So to summarize, we can say in the mixed economy we have both sectors, private sector and public sector businesses. Public sector, they are owned by the government, private sector owned by individuals. So in any country we can see a public school and a private school. We can see public hospitals, private hospitals. We can see businesses owned by the government like water supply and electricity, and we can see businesses owned by the private sector like telecom companies, for example, or restaurants or schools or whatever. This is the difference between the two. In your syllabus, you are required to know the difference between private and public sector and give examples. I just explained mixed economy because you should know the meaning of mixed economy. So in your syllabus for chapter 2, it's important to know the meaning of primary, secondary, and tertiary sector, of course, and it's important to know the examples on each sector, and I should know the private and public sector in your syllabus and in the exams. The past papers, they usually ask about these points. Okay, so that's it for chapter 2. Looking forward to see your comments, and of course if you have any questions I will be ready to answer them. Thank you for listening, and see you soon in chapter 3.